Looky here. Some looking to a new poll. It finds Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I know you have a strong opinion about him, one way or the other. That's just true across the board. His third-party presidential bid might have a major impact on next year's presidential election. The Quinnipiac University survey finds President Biden only leading President Trump by 1 point in a head-to-head matchup. Those numbers have shifted over the past several months, back and forth between the two. But with third-party candidates added, Kennedy hits 22% of voter support and takes more support away from Mr. Trump than Mr. Biden. Let's bring in White House columnist for The Hill, Niall Stanage. Okay, Niall. So, it's not surprising, right? Because especially over the last half of this year, we've seen people like, let's just say, all Democrats, basically say that RFK appeals more to Republicans, that he's not a true Democrat.
Yes, that's right. Sorry, I thought you were going to add more to that thought. Yes, we have indeed.
I think I've said enough. I want you to talk.
Yeah, we have. I mean, there are clearly a number of areas in which Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not a traditional Democrat. Around about a month ago, he decided he was going to launch an independent bid rather than continue to compete in the Democratic primary. There is clearly reason to suspect or to look at polling and say that Republican voters are more favourably disposed toward him, perhaps particularly supporters of former President Trump, because it's not so much about the individual policies in that respect. It's that Kennedy and Trump share, I think, a general sort of worldview, which is, in summary, that the elites are lying to people or are misleading people or conspiring against people. So it's not that surprising to me that there would be a degree of crossover in their support.
Well, do you think, I mean, last year's midterms proved that Democrats, some Democratic-aligned groups, they actually funded certain GOP candidates they believe would help derail the red wave. There was no red wave, but they were endeavoring to use strategy here. Do you think that they'll do the same thing with RFK Jr.?
I actually don't necessarily think they need to do so, but it is interesting, that whole point about one side sort of bigging up a competitor or contender that they think will be useful to them. Because it's only a few months ago that allies of former President Trump were purporting to be very impressed with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I think as a way of creating sort of mischief-making when he was competing in the Democratic primary. Roger Stone, for example, was putting forward the idea of a Trump-Kennedy unity ticket. I know Roger Stone a little bit. He's got about as much sincere interest in that as he has in electing me as president. But
I think you'd be a fine candidate.
Well, I'm sadly not eligible, as the accent indicates.
Darn.
But, I mean, people like Stone and Steve Bannon were using Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to create problems for Democrats.
Well, it's puzzling to me, because outside of the spoiler poll of Politico talking a little bit about the money, and RFK Jr. pulls in former donors to Mr. Trump at a much higher rate than past donors to President Biden. I know you're really good at math, so I know you're going to help me break this down to our viewers. The Politico found Kennedy has drawn millions of dollars from donors who kept their wallets shut in the last 2 presidential elections. So he's somehow igniting a movement, some are saying, similar to what Bernie Sanders did in 2016. Well, we know how that ended.
Yeah. I mean, that's the theory. I think that there is an argument that he is appealing to voters who have been disenfranchised or felt marginalized, getting back to that sort of anti-elitist sentiment that he definitely capitalizes on and becomes a sort of an emblem or avatar of. Now, having said all that, it's still a very big stretch to imagine RFK Jr. being elected president or even becoming a very serious candidate. That's why so much of the conversation is about what impact his candidacy could have if, again, we're in a Biden-Trump rematch.
I know that producers are saying we have to move on, but really quickly now, I just want your take. With everything that's happening with immigration, with China, Taiwan, with Ukraine, Russia, and of course, most notably now, Israel and Hamas, do you believe these are going to be inflection points that completely tip the scales one way or another, and that we might all be surprised come 2024?
Yes, we could be, and I know we're almost out of time, but the Israel-Palestinian conflict, I think, has a lot of potential to cause problems on the left, where there's a big split between traditionally pro-Israel Democrats like President Biden and the left of the party, which is far more sympathetic.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.